Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson, President and Founder of AgileDad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. So without any further ado, let's get started. It's Hump Day, and I'm happy to be here with you on Hump Day. I hope that you take advantage of the Hump Day Challenge. So every Wednesday, AgileDad posts a Hump Day Challenge out there on LinkedIn and Facebook. We would love to have you actively participate as we get some pretty exciting topics and we get some pretty interesting conversation going on. So if you're looking for something to help get you through and push you through the week, the Wednesday Challenge is a good way to do it. So, with that being said, I wanted to continue with part 2 today of our episode on how to become a really strong or better Agile coach. What are some of the tips and tricks, some of the things you should look for? Now, yesterday we covered the first 5 topics. Today I'm hoping to hit 5 more. So, let's see what we can come up with for today. So, coming in at tip number 6, remember things are likely the way they are for a reason. So, this is interesting because oftentimes I get people who say, our company's different and we do things different. And when you learn about the way they're doing things, it's not that far of a cry different than what other companies are doing. The only difference is that they see things differently because through their lens, they feel like they're not doing things the same way other companies do. And if something is a certain way, I have one company that always told me, in order to do any backlog item, we need to fill out a form, a 17-4162 form, or whatever the case may be. I don't remember the exact number. But I was like, why do you have to fill out a form every time you create a backlog item? It didn't make any sense. But then what I later found out was because they got caught by some auditory process that was thrown in by one of the big guys like Deloitte, wound up happening, and I love Deloitte, but the point is, what wound up happening is they ended up having to fill out this form because they mistakenly threw something in that someone didn't know about. And the form was supposed to be a gate or a catch-all to make sure they didn't enter certain things in without it being seen first. Now, once I understood the reasoning behind it and the logic behind it, of course, there was a different way to do this. But I think that sometimes we go in as a coach and we don't take into consideration it. Sometimes things are in place the way they are for a reason. So it's important for us as a coach to break those things down, do why, how, do a fishbone analysis, find a root cause, do whatever you have to do, but figure out why things are the way they are, because I think that's going to give you some insight into how the company's working and what types of things you may have to pivot or adjust. So that's a good starting point, right? Next is probably my favorite tip of all, and I swear I didn't put this one in here myself. It's on their list. Spend time on training. Oh my goodness. I can't tell you how many times I go into organizations and I assume that everyone is fully trained and that everyone understands what Agile is. In fact, I have a fun story I like to tell about a company who came to me and they said, Lee, they said, we need you to come in and validate what we're doing. I said, yeah, I'd be happy to. So I went in and I said, I just want to let you know, we're not doing the Agile. We're doing Agile, all right, but we're not just doing the Agile. We're doing the hyper Agile. I'm like, the hyper? What on earth is the hyper? He says, yeah. He says, those meetings that all the other teams have for 15 minutes a day? I said, yeah. He says, we have those for 45 minutes a day. I'm like, that's impressive. He says, yeah, we break all of our work. Forget about the 2-week stuff. We take on 6 weeks of work at a time because we're hyper Agile. I'm like, man. He says, yeah, he says, and we have coordination. We don't just have scrum masters. He said, we have coordination across our project coordinators, our project managers, our senior project managers, our project liaisons, our scrum masters, our advanced scrum masters, our advanced scrum team leads. I'm sitting here, my head's about to explode, right? He says, and we meet as a group every single day, at least twice a day to have coordination. I'm like, oh, you're making my skin crawl, right? But what's amazing to me is that organizations don't spend the money or the time on a training, even if it's just to get everyone on the same page. It doesn't require a full 2-day workshop with a certificate at the end. It doesn't require all those other things, although those are nice. Don't get me wrong. If you get the right trainer, they're going to be able to help you best interpret how you can do things. You'd be surprised how many people out there who are working in Agile don't even know that the Agile Manifesto exists. They don't know what it says. They don't know basic tenets or principles of Agile. They don't understand what roles do. And I think that if you have strong training and workshops, that you can bring these into your internal Agile Center of Excellence and really get yourself moving and cranking in the right direction. So for me, there's no substitute for good training. Just make sure you have a good trainer. Now, you're probably wondering, how do I select or how do I know? There's 3 things you need to make sure you have a good trainer. The first one is you want to make sure that they have publicly available reviews online where anyone can type anything and it gets published so that you can see it. Good trainers have hundreds of these, so make sure you get reviews and make sure they've worked with companies that are the size of your company, big or small. You want to make sure they have experience in both. Two, make sure your trainer isn't someone who's only teaching by the book. It's real easy for me to come out and say, according to the book of who, in spite of Agile, this is what to do, and I don't want to, approach Agile that way. If you're constantly turning to Scrum for Dummies or Agile for Dummies to get your answer, granted, it's got great foundational information, but it's not going to be the way that most successful companies apply agility inside of their organization. It's a good starting point, but not necessarily a good finishing point. So for me, I think that I tell people look for a trainer who has a wealth of experience working with companies outside of just teaching what a book says to do. Make sure you ask to review a little bit of their materials, or maybe ask to sit in for a small part of a session that they're conducting. There's so many things you can do to make sure that you have a really solid trainer. Most importantly, ask for references if needed. They should be able to aptly provide you with as many references as you'd like. So that's how you're going to make sure you got the right person engaging with your team, because that's important. Your team's your most valuable asset. You want to make sure you got the right people engaging with them. Number 8, ensure features can be completed within a set timeline. So anytime you're talking about features or real high level things or epics, depending on how you organize your work, you want to make sure that these things can be completed within a quarter or by a date. You want to make sure you set some benchmarks. You want to make sure you put some sticks in the ground. And I think that sometimes we let things get too big and too out of hand, and that causes issues too. So the rule should be that you want to set up a container of some kind, and that within that container, you want to make sure that people are able to finish the work they've committed to, and that you're measuring your progress based on completed work. That you're not trying to use other metrics to figure out, what's going on and all that good stuff. A lot of people turn to me and they have a discussion about Agile earned value, where you could say we spent this much of our budget, we're this much of our time in, what percentage of our features are complete, which is great, but you don't want to necessarily say, hey, I only want to use that as a measuring stick. For me, I say when you're focused on outcome and not output, you're doing as little as possible to achieve the happiest end user result. And I know it sounds weird, but less is more. So you want to make sure that you find ways to make sure that you're engaging and measuring the right things so that you can ensure that things can be completed within an allotted time frame. Number 9 says have a discussion about what quality is and how we intend to achieve it. I don't have a ton to add here because that's pretty straightforward, right? You want to make sure that you understand what the feedback loops are, who needs to be in those feedback loops, what does the development life cycle look like, what does our quality look like, whether it's software, hardware, anything in between. You want to make sure that you understand how you're testing your products and services, where automation or optimization come into play. All of these things need to be discussed so that everyone's on the same page. And so we can make sure we have people working together on how they're detecting deficiencies and what we're doing when a deficiency is detected. Perfect. Finally, for today, do not discuss scaling frameworks if teams are not collaborating on the same product anyway. I'm going to go one step further. Do not discuss scaling frameworks. Period. Now, I wish it was that easy. I think too many times we jump to scaling because we're going there for the wrong reason. So let me explain. So many people say, hey, I want to scale because I want to build more stuff. And, my answer is, so let me make sure I get this right. I don't care whether it's safe, less, Nexus, Dad. I don't care which one it is, Scrum and Scale. If you are building a pile of crap, you're going to say, let's scale so we can build more piles of crap, bigger piles of crap, because bigger pile of crap doesn't smell better, right? So I think for me, it means that you need to focus the opposite direction. I think that for me, when I go into organizations and I teach them, the first thing I teach them how to do is how to limit WIP or how to scale backwards, how to scale back. And once they have their head around what they should be doing and they understand their product and people are working on things that are on the same page, then it's appropriate once they start performing and their technical debt load is reduced. There's a lot of little things that you have to look for. Then you can say, let's talk about scaling. Let's talk about safe. Let's talk about less. Let's talk about Nexus. Each of these add great value in their own way, but I think it's important for you to have your team be prepared. It's a crawl, walk, run thing. And I think too many people just dive in and say, we're going to do it. And they're not prepared. So I hope these tips were helpful, and I hope that they help you along your coaching journey, and I hope they help your organization be more successful. We encourage you and invite you to tune in tomorrow so you can hear part 3, the final part for this episode or for this topic, the ways to keep your teams and keep your organization focused on strong Agile coaching and make you a better Agile coach. As always, we encourage you to submit your ideas. To learn more at agiledad.com, we'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care. We'll see you.